is one of my favorites that I've ever played in all of Universus. So I wanted to share it here and go over the deck. It's Toga 4, who is a really sick character because she can copy the ability of a character from your discard pile. So you have to run character cards, which are, normally you don't run character cards inside of your deck. You can't build them. They are a zero mid block, but they don't do anything in your hand. So um, that's one of the major downsides of Toga 4. But in return, we get extremely powerful effects because we can pick up these five-hander effects and put them in our six-hander while having the best of the defensive five-handers and the best of the offensive five-handers, so that our offense and defense are both extremely strong because we're taking these five-hander abilities and putting them on a six-hander. Another thing Toga 4 does is it just mills a card and gives you a damage, and if it deals damage, you gain a health, which actually does add up, just giving you that extra damage on your attacks. So, one of the key and core ideas of this deck is this is an echo deck. We want to be playing as many attacks as we can on a turn, and we don't really care if our opponent blocks because eventually they're going to stop blocking. They're not going to be able to block everything, especially when we're giving everything 1 speed and up to 5 damage between Woman and Toga's mill ability. So on offense, we're just trying to play as many attacks as possible, abuse this repeatable stats on every attack, and just kill them that way. Similarly to an Endeavor post cycle, but instead of giving it, you can do this pre cycle and you're giving it 1 speed and 5 damage instead of 2 speed and 4 damage. Another thing we're doing is we're running Mineta because on defense, discarding momentum to set an opponent's speed to 0 is crazy good. And this deck is an echo deck, so we're generating a lot of momentum to pay for our echoes already. And this momentum generation is also going to help us pay for this discarding momentum, set an attack speed to 0. I think this is extremely good in the meta because a lot of people are trying to play these um, single attack decks or decks that play one move that gets really, really big. And having a character ability that resets the speed is very hard for a person to cancel because generally you can't cancel character abilities. So this is a really strong defensive enhance currently in the current game. The top enhance I usually don't copy. Now Toga 4 you can copy one ability, but in some circumstances you can copy the top ability there to just clog their card pool if you think they're going out for a string rather than going for having one big attack. So Mineta 2 on defense just puts in a lot of work. We already talked about Woman here. Now going on to, I think I'll start with the attacks because I think we want to go over what this deck is trying to do offensively before going over some of the foundations. So first off is Borrowed Goods. This is one of my favorite cards right now because every deck is getting momentum, and punishing people for getting momentum is really good. We want to be getting as much momentum as possible, so this enhanced discard, your rival discards a momentum, get a momentum is very good. Now because we're an Echo deck, we get this combo off as well. So sometimes when our opponent doesn't hold as many cards in their hand as they should, we can really punish them with this combo enhance. And this is getting a damage and five damage and 1 speed. So if you really hand tax them with this combo enhance, that can be very good as well. Next is 4 Inverted Knife Throw. This is essential in this deck. I really love having it as a 4 of, and the reason why is not because, the only reason is this response here. You commit a foundation, when you check it, you get it into your momentum. Now this is so helpful on defense and offense for our Mineta, enhance, and also for our paying for our echoes. So having this method of just sometimes getting a free momentum really helps get us started. Next, we have Double Fist of the Mortal Flame. This is an echo and it's a 4-diff, which is really the most important part of it. But then the next part of it is that you can lose 2 health to get a momentum. So this is kind of a really strong echo because it gets you the momentum back after you echo it for the first time. Or if you don't have any momentum at all, you can guarantee a momentum with this first enhance. Next is Trace Eyes. The only thing about this that really matters is that it's a 4-diff that also has the Echo keyword. In a pinch, you can destroy Ready Foundation to pay for this attack's Echo cost, but normally you won't have to do that and you'll just be echoing it normally. And then just being a 4-diff Echo is really, really strong. Next, this is one of the key pieces in the deck, Spring the Trap. Now, this is what makes the deck really, really strong, in my opinion. In your momentum, you flip it, and a card does not count towards progressive difficulty in your card pool that turn. That's insane because you can go ahead, flip it, choose the first attack that you played, make it not count, and then spend it for your echo move. And then you can go and play your second echo move on no progressive. So the ideal play would be, double fist of the Mortal Flame, into a Trace Eyes, and all of them are on fours, and you've played four attacks on four difficulty with no progressive. So the enhanced to draw card is kind of nice if you have to play it, but normally we're just putting it into our momentum, and we're going to be putting it into our momentum with forced quirk activation, which I'll cover later. Next, we have Blue Flame Eruption. I don't actually love this card. It's just in there because sometimes we draw a hand full of characters or full of attacks on turn one, and we need to discard them to kind of draw back up and get more useful cards that we can build. So this League of Villains Enhance is the only reason it's in the deck. Draw two cards and discard two cards. We do have the League of Villains trait, so we are allowed to do that. Yeah, it's kind of like a necessary evil just because of the fact that our deck, it lacks some consistency because we're forced to play these character cards. And this is just adding some consistency that we lost because of that. Chachachera Onslaught is insane as a finishing up our Echo lineup. And the reason this card is so good is because you can lose 3 health and then pick up another Echo once you hit with it. And your opponent then is very highly incentivized to block this. But, blocking this twice is pretty tough. And the second time you have to block it, and it's a 6 high. So yeah, you can really, if your opponent commits out, this is the kind of card that just says, I win the game because I get to pick up 2 echoes from my discard, this echoed, and then I can play a total of 6 attacks from 1 attack. I think against decks that really like to block a lot, it's not going to be as good. So the side for it is Shapeshifting Impalement to jump to the sideboard. I think you can, play this card very easily as a replacement for Tetra Terror because it's 7 speed, so this is really hard to block. And you're going to give it 5 damage, so, a 8 mid for 8 twice is pretty respectable. So yeah, this one you can probably change out. There's also a Toga specific echo that I really wanted to make work. The Toga echo lets you unflip a momentum, so it's really good with Spring the Trap. Honestly, the only issue I had on it is that it's in the Tetra Terror slot, which is a 5 diff echo slot, and so I really don't like playing the 5 diff echo because you could check 2 3s in a row on that 5 diff difficulty echo move. So I think that 5 difficulty echo has to be doing a lot, and that one is a little too situational, in my opinion. On to the foundations. The most important one that I wanted to talk about is Force Quirk Activation. I think you have to run 4, even though it is unique, because this gets you your Spring the Trap, which is actually insane to make your first move ignore progressive and have a momentum. That's really the only reason you should be using this card. I would not bother using the bottom enhance. Then I guess I'll start with the spam foundation. Surviving the finals, just an insane spam. A Master's Pride is nice. I would run more of this, but it is a mid block, and our mid blocks, like, we have a very nice spread right now, but you could definitely run more of this card if you wanted to. Next is Fruit of Our Labors. I think this is really good as a deadlock piece that is hand taxing our opponent. Our win condition is just playing a billion moves that our opponent can't block all of them. Making them build a card from their hand is really going to help us towards that end. The other thing that this card is doing is it lets us discard 2 cards from our card pool on defense, which is really, really nice. So it's a nice defensive foundation as well. Next, Settling Old Debts is just a crazy card because you can just get to draw cards. So yeah. Incubating, one of the best cards in the game right now, just giving every attack your opponent plays a -1 speed. If you think about it, if you have those 1 diffs that commit for -2 speed, Incubating is just that on every move because you don't even have to commit this foundation to use it. So yeah, I think this is just an insane card. It also lets us remove foundations from our discard, which is kind of important because we want to cycle into more attacks. And so, because we're removing all our attacks with women, we could be in a situation where we remove all our attacks from the game, and removing some of our foundations is really nice for just keeping our ratio manageable post cycle. Battle for Dominance, another insane card. This card is nuts. Just removing a card from our card pool to draw a card on a rival's turn just lets us keep blocking their moves. It's really good against string decks, so I think it's just overall a great card. Next, incompatible quirks. I'm only running one because it's a unique foundation, but it is very, very good. Just removing the foundation to ready it just lets us have that additional foundation to commit on our kill string. And because we're running a deck that's playing a billion attacks a turn, having this ability to just get a foundation by removing a foundation is really, really good. You could honestly probably play more of this if you can stomach the situations where you draw your hand and you have multiple in your hand. Next, now this is where it gets a little spicy. Hiding in Plain Sight, I think, is an insane card because it just guarantees a momentum. So, like, this card is kind of like Vast Hybrid, the 3-diff Amajiki Foundation, but as a 2-diff, which is really, really good. And if your rival's in Desperation, you get 2 momentum, which is just nuts. So yeah, Hiding in Plain Sight, very good. Next is a Gift Returned, another spicy card that lets you add a card with check value 6 from your discard to your hand. Now, if you notice something about characters, they have a 6 check on them. So you can pick up your 0 mid block by flipping this card and block with your 0 mid. That is really, really good on defense, just always having that 0 mid block. And the other thing you can do is pick up a foundation. Then I'll just talk about it now. Ultra Regeneration is also 6 check foundation. That is just a sick foundation to be building, especially late game, where maybe you play an attack as a poke, you pick up your Ultra Regeneration, then you can build it. This is also a 2 low block if your opponent plays a low attack, so just the flexibility to pick up a foundation or whatever you need to block with or build with is really great. Next, we're running 1 copy of Pressured by All for One. We only need 1 copy, I feel, of this card because this card is really, really good, but we are already putting so much damage on our moves that this is kind of redundant. It's kind of mostly just our foundation outlet alongside incompatible quirks when we need to kind of dodge around deadlock and we have some face down foundations that we need to destroy so we can build in better ones. We do have a bunch of ranged and weapon attacks, so especially Trace Eyes. And the thing to know about Pressure by All for One, because we are running non-ranged and non-weapon attacks, is that you really are not using this on every move unless you built to like 20 for some reason and just have that many foundations. Just using this once or twice on a turn is still getting you a ton of value. This is just an insanely valuable card just because in 1 foundation you get a huge damage pump and a great foundation destruction outlet. Next, we have 1 copy of Rifle Arm. I actually don't like this card in multiples. I see a lot of people running like 4 of this card, and I just think that it's pretty mediocre if you're committing it for +2 or -2 speed, and if you're doing it on the first attack, you don't need multiples of this. Like, I can't think of a lot of situations where I would want to give the first attack my rival plays, like -9 speed or something. So I think this is a sick one of. It's the best thing to do on your opponent's first attack. Then on your turn, on your first attack, you can give your first attack 3 speed. But I feel like if you have multiples and you want to use it on like your second attack, it's just a bad card. 2 speed is not nearly enough to make it enticing for me to run it. So that's why I'm only running it as a 1 of. Next, we have 4 Fighting for Control. This card is nuts. Just being able to say no to something, unless you're, or you either say no to their best thing, or they have to commit to foundations for more foundations for it. A lot of times they will do that, and then they can't play the next thing they were planning on playing. So, yeah, I think this is just a 4 of that's very easy to do in this deck. Next, we have 2 League Invitation. This is nice as just a target commit. Sometimes your opponent is just running stuff that you have to commit, and this is a nice way to do that, or make them stun to stun 3. Next, we have Ultra Regeneration. Now, this card is mostly in here because on Evil, you sometimes don't draw enough cards. I was kind of trying to find ways to draw cards, and one way to draw cards is to draw it on your opponent's turn, which is usually not ideal because you can't build those cards, but or play those cards. But what you can do is kind of build out your hand, play everything in your hand, and then have be sitting on a bunch of Ultra Regenerations, and then you feel pretty safe. The gain 2 health is actually really, really strong, and drawing 2 cards after that and blocking their next thing is really good. Just sculpting as well, just drawing into attacks so that we can review our foundation and draw into even more attacks. Makes this a really nice card for backswings. It is a 4 diff, which is the only problem with this card. And we're not running anything like New Training Method because it's not on our symbol to cheat this in. So you do just have to build this on a 4, but I think that's okay because it's giving you that much value for itself, and we're able to fetch it with a gift returned. I don't know if 4 is correct. Maybe this is too greedy, but yeah, one thing that this does help shore up is that lack of draw. So I do like it quite a bit. Anyway, that rounds up the deck. So just yeah, what else can I say here? I guess yeah, the main thing that makes this deck really sick on offense is the Force Quirk activation with the Spring the Trap combo. This is something that other characters could do, but I think Toga just plays Echoes so well because of the amount of stats she can put on these Echoes without that much effort to make them all live. Um, oh yeah, one thing I did want to mention is you'll notice that Evil has a ton of insane actions, but I'm not running any. The reason is I just felt like um, either running character cards already, and so it's just so hard to justify another card that you can't play on your turn. Um, you'll notice I'm actually only playing 3 women, which is very low. I think honestly, I might side a 4th woman or something, but I do think that, and the reason is there are some decks that are trying to hit your discard, so discard hate can really hurt Toga 4. But even though I'm only playing 3 women, I find that I still get women in my discard pretty consistently on usually a turn 3, which is usually when you're going in anyway. This is not really a turn 2 deck, just because you're probably not going to have your woman in your discard. Um, and yeah, oh yeah, and one more thing is when your opponent's attacking you, you do want to be using this enhanced mill one just to build up your discard pile because we do have a lot of discard synergies, or like graveyard synergies. But yeah, uh, I felt like I had to bring this to a 3 of just because of the fact that um, you do have turns where you draw your hand and you have like 2 character cards in your hand, and that really sucks. I mean, they're fine for blocking with, but sometimes that means you're not building as much as you wanted to. So I think Mineta has to be a 4 of just because it's so strong, and you always want to see this. But yeah, Woman you can get away with as a 3 of because honestly, like 3 chances to kill your opponent is pretty good, and that's enough. Like usually your opponent is dead after you remove your first woman, so you don't need 3 of them. Uh, and then the extra copies are just so you find it on time. We do side actions, and the reason is that there are decks now that, you're just gonna lose to if you don't have like barrier shields. Specifically thinking about like the, you know, the Elder deck, Travis's Elder deck that plays like 6 attacks that all get really big. So having stuff like this in the side, I think, is necessary in this meta, and it's also helpful against a lot of other decks, maybe like a Rodan or something that's putting a lot of speed on their moves. But yeah, this does come at a big cost, so it's really tough to side these in or mainboard them. They're just in there because it's really important sometimes in certain matchups. Actually, the entire sideboard is basically speed hate, um, which, the sideboard I didn't put that much thought into, but I do think one of the things that can prevent us from blocking is really fast moves. So speed hate is nice. Then some runaways just for decks where maybe they're pumping a ton of damage and speed. Specifically, if they're pumping a lot of damage, then runaway becomes really really good. Runaway also is really good against string decks. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, I one more thing to show you all is the charts. So we've got a really nice block zone distribution, our difficulties. I would say this is a pretty nice curve, pretty even. Could maybe run a few more zero diffs, but I think the power we get from the higher difficulty foundations is fine. 59% foundations, which is a little low for what I would normally want. But then again, we need to make room for the 10% of our deck that is character cards. And then 31% attacks, which is low. I mean, it's not low. It's actually like this is a good attack ratio, I would say. I would say most of my decks kind of sit around here. And especially because our attacks are often 2 attacks, I think you could even go lower than this. Um, Oh yeah, attack zones. Yeah, playing a lot of mids and highs, not too many lows. But then again, this blue flame eruption can become a low, and this tray size is 2 lows. So if your opponent is disrespecting your low zone, tray size kind of kills them. So yeah, this attack zone distribution, I think your opponent just has to hold a bunch of different zones. There's not much more for me to say about this deck, so I'll just cut it off here. Let me know what you think about this deck in the comments, and thanks for watching.